I've been getting a lot of emails lately about how can you sustain high performance every single day. See, because most people can access peak performance a day in a month, or maybe a day every week, but they cannot consistently sustain it over time. In order to really sustain it and be an elite performer, you need a specific set of practices, which is the things that we typically train our clients in. Today, I'm going to give you the full framework so you understand exactly what is required and you can take the first step towards mastering yourself systematically. Not long ago, I was a narcoleptic architect. Narcoleptic meaning I had narcolepsy, which is a condition by which you fall asleep anywhere because you don't have normal sleeping patterns. I even crashed my car 4 times in 4 years. And I also had a lot of trouble focusing and really getting anything done. These days, I am able to consistently have elite days, and I'm one of the best performance coaches for entrepreneurs out there. So this video is going to be very useful for you if you want to understand what is the transformation that you should aspire to go through, the one I went through and the one that I had the privilege to guide more than 300 people through, right? But first, let's clearly define what is an elite performance day. What are the minimum standards that I would consider elite, right? Just to be clear, we are on the same page, right? So in terms of actual output, in terms of meaningful things done per day, I would look at between 3 and 5 high leverage tasks, right? So a high leverage task can be some sort of report, a video if you do video marketing. It can be a very important meeting. It can be something that actually moves the needle forward. That is not business for the sake of business, but it is instead a clear step forward, right? So between 3 and 5, because I am assuming that each one of these takes 90 minutes, right? Also, how much focus hours you should aim at? Well, at least, in order to be considered elite, right? 8 plus focus and flow hours. The average knowledge worker gets 2.5 hours according to Rescue Time, right? So we are looking to at least triple what the average person is able to do. We want to also be able to have no mental hiccups, which means no procrastination, no doubts, no bad habits, right? We don't want to be engaging in negative mental or physical habits that can hurt our performance. So we're looking at least 8 hours of pure, unadulterated focus and flow state, working on very highly important tasks, right? So that is, in my view, a great day. Now, but on top of that, of course, we are complex human beings and we will need to think systematically across our life. So not everything is about work, right? I also typically do 1 hour of exercise, I'll say exercise because it's typically is the gym, right? Sometimes it's going running, but typically would be 1 hour of weightlifting in the morning. I also try to get 20 minutes of sleep, so a nap every single day, 3 to 4 hours with my wife. Sometimes we go on date, like on Thursdays maybe. 2 to 3 meetings per day. Schedule at the end of the day, typically, or at the beginning if they're with my team. All right, so this is within the average day. I get 8 hours of focus working on, let's say, when there's 8 hours, typically 5 high-leverage tasks. I have no mental hiccups, so I'm not doubting myself. I'm not procrastinating. I'm not spending time doom scrolling. I'm not doing anything that is not conducive to elite results in business. But I'm not a robot, right? So I also go to the gym. I also have a nap. Of course, I eat, right? I have lunch and breakfast. I fast as that, though, typically. Then 3 to 4 hours with my wife, so I have healthy relationships, and then 3 or 2 meetings every single day. I mean, ideally, the fewer the better, but here goes coaching, goes sales, and goes team meetings, right? So everything is very optimized and efficient. So in essence, this is for me a consistent elite performance day. If you can hit 8 hours of focus every single day, like our clients do after we train them on the highly important, high leverage tasks, you're golden. You're going to win, right? Then on the weekends, I would rest or recharge, typically, spend time with my friends, climb a mountain, run a longer distance, do all sorts of things, right? So a very healthy, well-balanced life that is nonetheless overly focused on doing what needs to be done in business. I don't waste time on the phone. I don't waste time chasing initiatives at work that are not important. I don't waste time multitasking. I don't waste time in things that typically hurt my performance, right? Okay, cool. So this is how you do it. This is the kind of elite performing day in my view. Do this 5 times a week, like every work week, and you will achieve in 1 week more than most people do in a month. I can guarantee that. We have the data because we train a lot of people, right? So this is what an elite day looks like. And how do you get here, right? Because it's just not as simple as showing up at your desk and praying for the best. That's just not how it works. So how do you achieve this level of personal performance and efficiency? Again, without any lack of clarity, without any procrastination, without, low energy, consistently at peak performance. So let's define what peak performance is. Peak performance when you're firing on all cylinders, spiritually, mentally, physically, and from an executive standpoint, right? So the first thing we have to dial in is what I call a spiritual performance. Spiritual performance, which may sound woo-woo if you've never heard this term before, it is related to meaning and awareness, right? So in essence, the more spiritually fit you are, the more meaning you derive from the things you do in your day-to-day. The more you care about the stuff that you're involved in, the better control you have about your awareness so you can filter in the right things and filter out the wrong things. The better you know yourself and know your mind and can take control of your mindset and behavior. Spiritually fit entrepreneurs, in essence, are more resilient, more adaptable, able to consistently show up with full motivation. If you don't take care of your spiritual side of your performance, at some point you will run out of motivation. You will not get up once you fall down. You will quit. And as you know, most entrepreneurs quit. They don't fail, they quit. There's no such thing as an unsuccessful entrepreneur that's been 20 years being unsuccessful. At some point, that entrepreneur will become successful if he or she does not quit. And why would an entrepreneur quit? Because the spiritual performance is not dialed in, because they do not care enough about what they're doing, because they haven't found ways of architecting their purpose and core values to sustain long-term performance, which leads to guaranteed results. So the first thing is spiritual performance. Most people forget about this because you don't need to start. You can start without having a clearly defined purpose, and you may start without defining your core values and without shaping your awareness and extracting meaning, right? Whoever has ever dropshipped a fidget spinner knows what I'm talking about. No one is purposefully connected to selling shit from China, if you know what I mean, right? But you can start a business for a very selfish reason, and that is great. But at some point, you're going to be wiped out by someone who is doing the same thing you're doing, but coming from a place of purpose. Because every hardship is going to be a badge of honor for that person. Everything they do, they don't want to be doing is a sign that they're building their best life ever. That is what spiritual performance gives you, right? So that is absolutely crucial for winning. You can start with it, but if you want to win, you absolutely need it. And if you read autobiographies by entrepreneurs, but also other elite performers, there's always a meaning component. They're always talking about meaning. How does their business or their craft or their career actually provides meaning to their lives, right? The more spiritually fit you are, the higher your chances of accessing flow states, because you are developing something called autonomy. In the psychological literature, that means that you have selected that path and you have intrinsically motivated yourself to pursue it, right? So spiritual performance is number one. Now, then what? Well, then you have mental performance, right? Mental performance in essence, is concerned with mindset and behavior, right? When your mental performance is not trained, you have what psychologists call fixed mindset, in which you feel at the mercy of the world. You are a victim of circumstances. You do not believe your potential can be developed, nor there's any way out of your current situation. That specifically is called learned helplessness, which is this term that describes when an individual has assumed that there's no solution to the situation they're in. And it is a very dangerous psychological state to be in, right? But it's not only the mindset, like how you think, but it's also what you do with that mindset. But how do we know someone has learned from a lesson and someone is really evolving? Is because they're doing different things, right? You can have the best mindset, but if your behavior does not reflect that mindset, you don't really have internalized that mindset. So mental performance is all about shaping the right belief system, the right mindset, and the right behavior. Most people over-focus on mindset without developing the right behavior. Now, the higher your spiritual performance, the more in control you are of your awareness, the better you can understand your own mind and discriminate between useful and unuseful thought. That is very important. This is why most mindset advice just doesn't work. Because in order for mindset training to work, in other words, in order to successfully reprogram your mind to believe different things, you must understand how those thoughts, emotions, and beliefs get created. And that is typically very hard if you haven't trained your awareness, right? But you can do it, but it just takes so much longer. So why don't you first train, or at least at the same time train spiritual performance, and then you have a higher likelihood of quickly reprogramming your mind and displaying that new mind through behavior, right? Spiritual, mental. And then what, right? If you're purposely connected with the task and you are mentally clear on what to do and you are executing consistently, what can go wrong? Well, what can go wrong is that you are physically depleted. In other words, your energy and stress management are all over the place. And this is concerned with energy and stress, which really are two sides of a spectrum, right? If you're highly stressed, you typically are low in energy and vice versa. So physical performance or physiological performance has to do with how do you manage your energy and your stress, because stress is inevitable. Every entrepreneur is going through stress. And in fact, stress can be good because short-term stress, acute stresses are what scientists call hormetic stress, create necessary adaptations in the brain and nervous system. So stress is not bad. Not knowing how to deal with stress is bad. And how you typically train your physical performance? Well, of course, the more healthier you are, the more fit you are, the better dialed in your sleep, your nutrition, and your exercise, the better your physiological performance, the better your stress management, the higher energy you will typically be. But there's also a huge part of managing your stress level that has to do with your breath, how you use your breath to either stress you up or calm you down. That is also fundamental in elite performance. If you have good physiological performance, you can, for instance, calm yourself before a very important presentation or a very important sales call or in a negotiation of a very important deal. This is done through mastering your nervous system, right? So if you're purposely connected, you care about what you do, you have a big why behind what you do, your mind is on point, you are high energy and are able to remove stress from your life, then what is missing? Executive. Executive is what you do, exactly the things you devote your attention to. And this typically are concerned with leverage, right? Doing the right things, but also speed. Something that I would typically encounter, so we work with mostly founders, right? Mostly entrepreneurs. And what we typically see is that they are not moving fast enough and they're not prioritizing fast enough or good enough. Also, they end up creating, or when they come to us, they have these businesses, they may even have teams that are not moving as fast as they need in order to win, and they're not prioritizing effectively, right? So mastering the art of prioritization, which is, basically leverage, and execution, which is basically speed, is going to help you become so much more effective. At this point, I would also include flow states. Flow states are an executive capability, because you create the conditions with your decisions to access a flow state, right? So these are the 4 pillars of peak performance, right? Peak performance is not a glorified fitness. It's not having a healthy body and going to the gym. It's not being healthy, right? Or mindset. It's not about only psychologically priming yourself for the task. All of those things are components of peak performance. But peak performance, the absolute most elite version of yourself, requires spiritually, mentally, physically, and executive training. Couldn't be otherwise. If you're the fittest guy in the room, you're high energy all the time, but your mindset is shit, you don't care about what you're doing, and you're consistently working on the wrong things, do you think you're operating at peak performance? Of course not. And even if you are, very purposefully connected to what you're doing, you're absolutely in flow all the time, but your mindset is not what it should be. You cannot deploy the right behavior. You cannot do the things you said you were going to do. You're constantly stressed out, and you're prioritizing the wrong way. Are you operating at peak performance? Of course you're not, right? So this is a master model. I built it over 6 to 7 years at this point, and it just works, right? It really just works. Now, how do you train this? Well, we have 72 protocols as of today, but I'm going to give you the most important ones. The most important ones, and this is something that every single one of you should do it. Every single one of you should do it. No exceptions whatsoever, right? Absolutely no exceptions. So first of all, here is meditation. There's this running joke in our elite community that I've taught meditation to more people than a meditation teacher, because people come to us not knowing that they will have to learn meditation if they want maximum results, and they typically learn it very quickly. Now, most people we work with, they don't associate meditation to high performance, but it is absolutely foundational, because there's no other way to train your mind to discern between thoughts, train your awareness, and derive meaning from the things that you're doing. Meditation is a mental training protocol, really. Then on the mental side of things, the number one protocol that you absolutely have to do, this is called mental reprogramming. And I know it sounds woo-woo, but let me tell you, it isn't. In essence, there's probably 100 ways of doing this, as there are dozens different meditation techniques. But in our book, how we do it, the most efficient manner that I've built over the years is a self-hypnosis protocol in which you get into a state of high susceptibility in yourself in order to reprogram your subconscious mind. So we have to deactivate or lower the effect of the conscious mind when receiving the commands that we will later tell ourselves. And this self-hypnosis typically comes with visualization and affirmations the right way, right? And I do this every day, and I do this every day. Then on physical performance, so assuming that you're going to the gym, you're taking care of your nutrition, and you are sleeping well, and you should, right? That is basic, foundational for every human being. And it's especially relevant for us entrepreneurs that were subject under extreme stress. Then what can be done here? Well, breath work. We already discussed it. It doesn't matter what is the breath work technique you use. What matters is that it serves you, right? And you deploy it depending on what you need. Maybe you need kind of to get more stressed if you're getting sleepy, or get more relaxed if you're too stressed out. The breath work is a tool, and we give our clients a lot of protocols, but what I would recommend is that you do tumo if you need to hyperventilate, so raise your stress levels, and you do box breathing if you want to relax yourself, right? This helps you in the moment regulate your stress response. And finally, executive, how do you find leverage? What is the number one kind of protocol that helps you discriminate in between tasks, what's important, what's not important, what makes sense long-term, what doesn't, what am I good at, what I'm not good at, what is also a core component of flow states is feedback, right? The average human doesn't like to get feedback because they have a negative association with the word feedback. They feel feedback is a judgment on their performance. And it is in a way, but the goal is that we are able to provide feedback to ourselves, that we know how to tell ourselves what's working and what's not working in order to improve. There's this quote by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi that says that the mark of the expert is the ability to give himself objective feedback, right? So an elite day in which you're able to sustain high performance every single day, at least requires these 4 habits. I guarantee it. Now, what is the minimum dose that you need? How much time should you devote to this? How long does it take? Because it may look like a lot of work, but it's not. Well, meditation, I do 20 minutes, but you can do 12 minutes. That is the latest psychological consensus, right? 12 minutes a day for 8 weeks already reprograms your brain. It creates new neural circuits. Then mental reprogramming, I do it is 9 minutes in my case, but let's say 10 minutes, that's enough. Then breath work, typically 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes of breath work twice a day at most is already good enough, right? Let's say 1 session, so 5 minutes. And then on the feedback side, just send yourself an end of day report or an after action report. You tell yourself how the day went, how to improve tomorrow, how to get better. And this typically takes me 5 minutes. So 12 plus 19, that's 20. That's 21. Then we have 5. On 31 minutes, we have the 4 foundational product goals of an elite day, right? This is the things you absolutely need to master. We have way more than this, right? We have more than 72, but these 4 are the most important. Consistently do these things, and you can be the lowest IQ, lowest skill entrepreneur that you will catch up very quickly, because performance skills, your ability to show up on your day, is so much more important than the technical skills, which is what you are typically able to do. When you are operating at peak performance, you can learn quickly and fast, and you can get more done per unit of time. So that's how you typically kind of win, right? So as I said, we want at least 8 hours of focus. We want 3 to 5 high-level tasks. We want to also be a normal human being and spend time, rest and recovery, a nap, going to the gym, having lunch, spending time with the loved ones, all of those things, right? And those are the 4 foundational protocols. Now, what else is needed, right? Well, the next thing that is typically needed is having the right structure for your day. In other words, not wasting your day in distractions. And the best structure for your day is a 90-minute work session in which you work against the clock. So this is called a ring fence session. And a ring fence session, in essence, is a 90-minute period in which you have one task freely chosen, right? So you chose the task, because if you didn't choose it, you will not care as much about it. When you choose your task, you trigger something called autonomy, which is a flow trigger. One task, so clear goals, that's another flow trigger. Against a timer, that is very important because it triggers the high consequences flow trigger. What else? And then with feedback here at the end, feedback driven. So we're looking to validate something, right? We're going to write a 1,000-word article in 90 minutes on this topic, and I'm going to be assessing whether I was able to create a great article at the end of 90 minutes, and I will jot down areas for improvement. This is how you do it. And finally, and this is very important, 4% above difficulty. So let's say that yesterday I was able to write a 1,000-word report. Well, tomorrow, 4% more than that is 1,040. Right? This is a number that came from a Google study. So in essence, how you manage yourself within business is crucially important, because if you just show up at your desk wishing to get a good day, but you don't have no strategy about how to make it happen, guess what's going to happen? Not what you want. You must be strategic about it. And the best way is to have several sessions of 90 minutes followed by 30 minutes. 30 minutes of rest, right? Rest and recovery. This is very important because every time you switch between tasks, you are creating something called attention residue, which is when a part of the brain is still lingering with the previous task. So your cognitive ability, your capacity to handle tasks is diminished a little bit. So if you are constantly switching over time, you are accumulating attention residue and you end up not being able to accomplish the task. Productivity really is a mental and brain management game where it's not about downloading apps or doing Pomodoro, all that stuff. It's about knowing how you can best perform and then actually doing it, actually following best practices, right? So this is a 2-hour period in which you have 90 minutes, so 75% of that time spent working and 30 minutes spent resting. And you do this 5 times. So you get a 10-hour workday. That's it. In one of these rest and recovery protocols, you can have lunch. In another one, you can meditate. In another one, you can do some type of breath work. You can go for a walk. You can run an errand. You can do things that typically do not involve looking at a screen, because what we want is to give the brain the ability to rest and recover and recharge after an intense period, right? So rest and recovery protocols after every 90-minute work session. So you end up having a day that looks like this. And this is how an elite day looks like. Work, play, work, play, work, play, work, play. That's it. This is it. This is how you sustain high performance, right? You are consistently working on the 4 core verticals of performance. You are priming yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, executive-wise. You are designing the right structure for the day and actually honoring that structure. So you know what you got to do and you actually do it. You follow the Selfmastered protocol, which is one task, which is freely chosen, 4% outside of your abilities, against a timer, and driven by feedback. So all of this is on point. What can go wrong? Well, what can go wrong is that you're not, the only thing that can go wrong at this point, if you know what to do and you know how to become better at doing it, right? You have the technical knowledge of how to really use your brain or maximize your brain's power for every day. But also you are consistently priming yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, executive-wise. The only thing that can go wrong is not knowing your performance pitfalls. Okay? So let's say that you have, this is the average day, let's say, right? And let's say that you are willing to, let's say this is 10 hours, 10 good hours, right? Let's assume that every single thing that we did during the day is positive, either working or resting, but is a net positive. And you have, or you typically wasted most of the day, right? So either you waste 10 hours or if you mastered 10 hours. Let's do it. Let's put it in red. Well, how it typically works is that you have the ability to have an elite day all along. You can move up and consistently have a great day. Let's see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, cool. So you are able, what you want is this. Every hour that passes, you're getting here. 10 hours of consistent, great work every single day. What typically happens is that you end up getting 4 hours wasted. So what is the solution here? Well, the solution is understanding that there's something called performance pitfalls. And performance pitfalls are the things that typically affect your performance. How this works is as follows, right? Let's say that, for instance, I'm going to give you a major performance pitfall for me. So as you know, I'm not a good sleeper. I used to be an narcoleptic. Now I'm, a well-functioning adult. But that means that I typically cannot wake up on my own and get up quickly. I need an alarm. Otherwise, I will just sleep for ages. And this is something I haven't been able to fix because of how my brain works. Now, what this means is that if I wake up, my alarm or my phone, so that's one thing. I'm not good at getting up quickly, but also I am very good at doing things while I'm asleep, right? I can typically have a conversation and I can do stuff. I can grab my phone and snooze without me even realizing it. The combination of those two factors is a performance pitfall. Because if I'm not careful and I set an alarm, I'll just hit snooze for 90 more minutes and start my day here, right? Instead of starting my day here. So that is a major performance pitfall that I have, right? Another performance pitfall that I have is typically that that used to be, right? When I got a very interesting insight coming my way, I just would go down the rabbit hole in the middle of the day. If I have, or something that was very interesting for me to explore, or maybe a client sending some sort of request that was not expected, I would typically go towards that thing and disregard the rest of my to-do list, which meant that I would just waste another 2 hours doing non-productive, non-meaningful, non-high leverage work. So for instance, how did I solve this performance pitfall? By putting phone in another room. So I need to wake up to turn the alarm off, but also drink water. I put a bottle of water right next to the phone. So I just go there and drink water. And once you've drunk water, there's no way you're going back to bed, typically, right? That is one system that I created. How did I solve getting distracted? The radar. The radar is how I call a list of things I'll tackle at the end of the day. Right? So in essence, if something is urgent, I will look at it at the end of the day, or if it's super urgent, like life or death, in the middle of the day. But what's most important is that I'm able to consistently move towards here, that I don't kind of start the right way, let's say, that I wake up, boom, the first 2 hours, I'm crushing it, but then something, an email comes in that requires my attention, then I pay attention to it, and then my performance goes down, and then for a reason, something else also goes down, and then boom, I've lost a few hours of the day. The goal is that I have the systems and the ability to prevent performance pitfalls so that the things that I typically tend to gravitate to do not derail me. For instance, an example of performance pitfalls in the past from some of our clients, that included YouTube video, that included porn, that included like all sorts of kind of behavioral failures. That included low leverage tasks, emails. That included all sorts of distractions that prevented them for staying consistent and moving along this line, right? So that is how you sustain high performance. It's not magic. You don't need crazy IQ or talent or anything like that. You just need to be trained. You just need to know what to do, right? Novak Djokovic was born a baby, just like you and me. He was not born the best player in tennis history. He had talent, of course, but what mattered and made the difference the most was his performance, his mindset, his behaviors, his resilience, his ability to show up every day or most times in order to win the important days. Same with Elon Musk, same with Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Rafael Nadal, Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom Brady, whoever you admire that you are sure that is an elite performer, right? That is something you train yourself. And you train yourself by mastering the 4 pillars of performance, which is spiritual, mental, physical, and executive. You also, as a knowledge worker, as an entrepreneur, you do it by setting the right structure for your day, but also you know your performance pitfalls, the things that you typically gravitate towards when you are not at your prime, and how to deal with that, right? Does that make sense? And this is how you sustain high performance. It works every time, works for every client. Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter, as I said, talent or IQ. What matters is that you consistently do the right things, and anyone can do this because anyone can train a better brain. You know that we now know the brain is neuroplastic. We can rewire the brain to get more done and become an overall better, higher performing human being. So I hope this was useful. Ask me below if there's anything that was not clear, any doubts whatsoever, and what should I cover in future videos. The goal is to build the ultimate channel for making you a performing warranty you succeed in business. See you in the next video.